Have you ever found yourself completely confused by a woman's reaction, wondering what just happened, what she meant, or why things suddenly shifted without warning? You're not alone. Most men have faced moments where communication turns into miscommunication, where calm becomes chaos, and where logic seems powerless. But here's the truth, it's not about figuring women out like puzzles, it's about understanding human nature through wisdom. And no philosophy teaches this better than Stoicism. Together, we'll uncover 10 hidden female weaknesses, rooted in psychology and emotional behavior, and show how you, as a man, can respond not with frustration or dominance, but with understanding and discipline. This is a guide for the thoughtful man. The emotionally intelligent man. The man who wants to lead not through ego, but through virtue. So sit back, clear your mind, and don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more Stoic wisdom and deep relationship insights. Now let's begin. Weakness 1. Let's begin with something almost every man has experienced, those moments when a woman suddenly reacts with strong emotion during a stressful or emotional situation. It could be during an argument, when plans fall apart, or when she's feeling overwhelmed. Her tone might shift, she might raise her voice, cry, or shut down unexpectedly. Now, this kind of emotional reactivity isn't necessarily a flaw. It's a human response. But many women, due to both biological factors and the way society has conditioned them, may show these reactions more openly or suddenly than men typically do. Women are often taught from a young age to express feelings, while men are taught to suppress them. So when stress hits, her emotions may surface quickly and intensely. Here's where Stoicism becomes incredibly useful. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus once said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." In other words, we can't always control what others do, but we can always control our own response. Let's look at a common example. You're having a conversation with your partner, and something you said upsets her. She suddenly raises her voice or becomes emotional. If you're not grounded, you might snap back, defend yourself harshly, or even walk away in anger. And just like that, the situation explodes into conflict. But what would a Stoic man do in that same moment? Instead of reacting instantly, he pauses. He takes a breath. He stays calm. He listens not just to the words, but to the emotion behind them. He understands that her reaction might be more about stress or fear than about him. Instead of feeding the fire, he becomes a source of calm. And that's powerful. When you learn to manage your own emotions in the face of someone else's storm, you become a stabilizing force in the relationship. Over time, this builds trust. She begins to see you not just as a partner, but as a safe space, someone who won't crumble under emotional pressure. So here's the key takeaway. Don't take emotional outbursts personally. Don't mirror chaos with chaos. When you stay calm, you create the space for both of you to think clearly, communicate better, and grow closer. Emotional strength isn't about shutting down feelings, it's about responding with wisdom when they arise. Weakness 2. Now let's talk about something that's very common in today's world, especially in the age of smartphones and social media. It's the desire for approval from others. And while this affects both men and women, many women, especially younger ones, are more openly influenced by it. Think about it, we live in a time where attention has become a form of currency. A photo posted online can get hundreds of likes, comments, and compliments. And over time, many women begin to connect their self-worth to how much attention they get, how many people like their photo, praise their looks, or respond to their stories. It becomes an unconscious habit, the need to feel seen, to feel attractive, to feel wanted. But when that external validation isn't there, when the likes don't come in, or when someone else seems to be getting more attention, insecurities start to surface. And in relationships, this can lead to tension. You might find your partner feeling down, comparing herself to others online, or needing frequent compliments and reassurance. If you're not aware of what's really going on, you might feel confused, annoyed, or even pushed away by her need for constant affirmation. Here's where Stoic wisdom steps in. Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor and philosopher, once said, "The approval of others means nothing if you approve of yourself." This quote is powerful. It reminds us that true confidence comes from within, not from the outside world. As a man, your role here isn't to compete for attention or criticize her for caring about it. Instead, try to understand where that need is coming from. Most of the time, it's not about vanity, it's about wanting to feel valued. Let's look at a real-life scenario. Imagine your partner posts a photo on Instagram, and she doesn't get as many likes as she hoped. Later, you notice she's unusually quiet or irritable. At first glance, this might seem trivial. But for her, it might feel like rejection or invisibility. You could choose to judge her and say, "Why does that even matter?" Or, you could see it as a moment where she's looking for reassurance. That's your opportunity to be the calm, centered voice. Offer a sincere compliment, not just about her looks, but about her character. And then, gently guide her attention inward. Here's the practical insight. Give her honest encouragement, yes, but also help her see her value beyond the digital world. Praise her strength, her intelligence, her kindness. Remind her that who she is matters far more than how many people click a heart icon online. And more importantly, live this truth yourself. Show her, through your own behavior, that your peace and self-worth don't come from outside opinions. Because when you embody that inner strength, you naturally invite her to do the same. In the end, Stoicism teaches us this: approval from others is fleeting, but self-respect is lasting. And the more we nurture that in ourselves and in those we love, the stronger and more grounded our relationships become. Weakness 3. Let's move on to something many men have experienced but few truly understand: indirect communication. You've probably heard phrases like, "I'm fine," or "do whatever you want," only to find out later, "She's not fine, and you definitely shouldn't have done whatever you wanted." What just happened? Well, here's the truth: many women have been socially trained to communicate in more subtle or indirect ways. From a young age, girls are often taught to avoid confrontation, to be polite, and to protect the emotions of others. As a result, instead of saying exactly what they feel or want, they may drop hints, use tone, or expect you to read between the lines. This isn't about manipulation, it's often about habit, and sometimes fear of being misunderstood or judged. But for men, especially those who prefer clear, straightforward conversation, this can be incredibly confusing. You may feel like you're constantly guessing or trying to solve a riddle, and that can lead to frustration or even conflict. Here's where Stoicism becomes a guiding light. The Stoic philosopher Seneca emphasized the importance of clear thinking, and that includes clear communication. If your mind is calm and focused, you're better able to listen not just to the words being said, but to the emotion behind them. You're not reacting, you're understanding. Let's paint a common scenario. Your partner seems upset, but when you ask her what's wrong, she says, "Nothing. I'm fine." But you can clearly sense from her body language and tone that something is bothering her. Now, you have two choices. You could get defensive and say, "Well, if you're fine, I won't ask again," or even get irritated and walk away. But that's not what a Stoic man does. A Stoic man stays grounded. He doesn't take the words at face value when they don't match the emotion. Instead, he calmly responds with something like, "I hear you saying you're fine, but I also sense something's bothering you. I care, and I'm here if you want to talk." That gentle approach creates a space where she feels safe to be more open. And over time, it encourages clearer communication between you both. So here's the practical insight. Don't fall into the trap of guessing games or emotional chess. Encourage open, direct communication by modeling it yourself. Be calm, be patient, and don't push, just be present. Tell her how much you value honesty and clarity in your connection. And most importantly, don't shame or mock her for being indirect, because often, it's not about you. It's about how she's learned to navigate emotionally charged situations. When you respond with empathy and self-control, you're not just resolving that one moment, you're building long-term emotional trust. Remember this, Stoic strength isn't about forcing truth out of someone. It's about creating the kind of atmosphere where truth feels safe to emerge. Weakness 4. Let's talk about something deeper, something that sits quietly beneath the surface in many relationships, the fear of abandonment. This fear isn't always visible at first. It can show up in subtle ways. Maybe she texts you constantly when you're apart, becomes overly anxious when you don't reply right away, or grows jealous when you spend time with others. Sometimes, it looks like clinginess, other times, it shows up as emotional outbursts or controlling behavior. But underneath all of that, there's usually one thing: fear. Fear of being left. Fear of being replaced. Fear of not being enough. This fear often comes from earlier wounds, maybe childhood experiences where she felt unloved or unsafe, or past relationships where she was cheated on, lied to, or emotionally neglected. And while it may not be your fault, it can still affect how she responds to you now. Here's where Stoicism can help us not just react, but understand. Marcus Aurelius said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this, and you will find strength. This means that even if someone else is acting from a place of fear, we don't have to absorb it or mirror it. We can choose how we respond. Let's walk through a real-world example. Imagine you're working late or you don't check your phone for a few hours. When you finally respond, you see several messages from her, some anxious, some frustrated. She says things like, "I guess you're busy with someone else," or "You're ignoring me again." Now, your first instinct might be to get annoyed or defensive. But pause. Breathe. Look deeper. What's really happening here is pain, probably pain that has very little to do with you personally. In that moment, she's being overwhelmed by the fear of being left behind. Her nervous system is reacting as if danger is near, even though you were just busy or unavailable. So how do you handle this as a Stoic man? You don't fight fire with fire. You don't snap back or retreat in silence. Instead, you reassure her, not in a way that feeds her anxiety, but in a way that reminds her of who you are. You say things like, "I'm here. I was caught up, but I care about you. I'm not going anywhere." And most importantly, over time, you show her, with your actions, that she can trust you. You become consistent, steady, emotionally reliable. Here's the practical insight. Reassure her when she's afraid, but don't enable behavior that's unhealthy. You're not responsible for healing all her wounds, but your presence can be part of her healing. When she sees that you don't run when things get intense, that you don't punish her for her fear, and that you don't disappear when emotions rise, she slowly starts to trust more. And that fear of abandonment begins to lose its grip. In summary, don't personalize her panic. Don't get pulled into chaos. Just be the rock, the calm in the storm. That's the essence of Stoic strength in relationships. You're not reacting, you're leading with empathy, clarity, and inner peace. Weakness 5. Now let's talk about a subtle but powerful force that can quietly create tension in relationships: over-attachment to romantic ideals and fantasies. Many women grow up surrounded by stories that shape how they think love and relationships should look. Think about it: fairy tales, romance movies, social media posts, and even pop music often paint a picture of a man who's always saying the right thing, always planning perfect surprises, always deeply emotional but completely composed. He's the Prince Charming, the soulmate, the flawless partner. And while it's perfectly okay to dream or imagine beautiful things in life, trouble starts when fantasy becomes the standard, and real life can't compete. So when a woman brings these idealized expectations into a relationship, she might begin to feel disappointed when her partner doesn't match up. Maybe he doesn't plan elaborate dates like the ones in movies. Maybe he's not as expressive as the characters in books. Maybe the relationship feels too ordinary. That's when frustration starts to build. She may not say it directly, but the signs show: complaints, comparisons, or a general sense of dissatisfaction. It's not always about what the man is doing wrong, it's about the invisible script she's expecting him to follow. Here's where Stoicism brings clarity. Epictetus, a Stoic philosopher, taught that suffering arises from false expectations. In other words, we don't suffer because of reality, we suffer because we wanted reality to be something else. As men, we can't live inside someone else's fantasy. But we can respond with understanding, strength, and honesty. Let's picture a real-life example. Maybe your partner says something like, "You're not romantic like the guys in the movies," or, "Why don't you ever surprise me with flowers like my friend's boyfriend?" Now, you could get annoyed. You might feel like you're being compared or unappreciated. But take a breath. This is your opportunity to be both grounded and kind. Don't mock her or say, "Well, this isn't a movie." Instead, speak with gentle truth. Say something like, "I might not do things the way those movies show, but I care about you in real ways. I'm consistent. I show up. I support you." And that's what real love is built on. Here's the practical insight. Respect her dreams. Don't shame her for having romantic ideals. We all want beauty and meaning in our lives. But also help her understand the difference between fantasy and reality. Not by force, but through steady action and honest conversations. Remind her that lasting love isn't made of grand gestures, it's made of small, daily choices. Of showing up when it's hard. Of being reliable when life gets messy. Of staying connected when things aren't perfect. In summary, it's okay if she has dreams of a fairy tale. Just make sure you keep both feet on the ground. Be kind, be steady, but stay rooted in reality. That's how you help love grow, not in fantasy, but in truth. And in doing so, you become the kind of man who leads with both compassion and clarity, the Stoic way. Weakness 6. Now let's look at a challenge that affects not just women, but nearly everyone in today's fast-paced world: the struggle with delayed gratification. We live in a time where everything seems to happen instantly. You click a button, and food arrives at your door. You send a message, and expect a reply within seconds. You post a photo, and start counting likes right away. So, it's no surprise that many people, especially women raised in this instant feedback culture, can grow impatient when things in life or relationships don't move quickly. Some may want immediate answers about where the relationship is going. Others may expect rapid emotional intimacy, career progress, or lifestyle upgrades. Now, let's be clear, this isn't about being entitled. It's about being human in a world that's trained us to expect results now, not later. But the truth is, some of the most valuable things in life, love, trust, growth, take time. They can't be rushed. That's where Stoic wisdom becomes especially useful. Seneca, a well-known Stoic philosopher, once said, "No great thing is created suddenly." And he's right. Think about it, you don't plant a seed today and get a full-grown tree tomorrow. You nurture it. You water it. You wait, and that's how growth happens. Now let's paint a real-world scenario. Maybe your partner is getting frustrated that the relationship isn't progressing as fast as she wants. She's asking questions like, "Why haven't we taken the next step yet?" Or, "Why isn't this where I thought it would be by now?" In that moment, you might feel pressure to speed things up, to say something just to calm her, or rush a decision to avoid conflict. But that's not the Stoic way. Instead of reacting, you stay steady. You explain things with patience and care. You say something like, "I understand why you're feeling that way. But I believe in building something strong, not just fast. Let's keep growing together and trust the process. Here's the practical takeaway. Don't just talk about patience, demonstrate it. Be the example of someone who isn't ruled by urgency. Someone who knows that good things take time. Whether it's love, healing, or building a future, show her that waiting and working slowly doesn't mean failure, it means maturity. You don't rush to calm her nerves. You calm her through your consistency. You let her feel that she's not being ignored, but that she's being guided through a process that has meaning. In summary, delayed gratification is a tough lesson for anyone, but it's also a gift. When you model patience, not just with her, but with yourself, you become a stabilizing force in the relationship. So don't feed the pressure to move faster. Slow down. Be present. Let your actions speak louder than promises. Because what grows slowly, often grows stronger. And that's what Stoicism teaches us, to trust the pace of real growth, not the illusion of instant rewards. Weakness 7. Let's talk about something subtle that happens in many relationships, something that often goes unnoticed or misunderstood. It's called emotional dominance, and sometimes, without even realizing it, a woman may begin to test her partner to see how emotionally steady he really is. Now, it's important to understand, this usually isn't about being manipulative or controlling. Most of the time, it's unconscious. It's not an attack, it's more like a test of stability. In today's world, where traditional roles are constantly evolving, many women are trying to figure out, can I trust this man to lead? Will he fall apart if things get tense? Or will he hold his ground when emotions rise? So how does this show up in real life? It might be a sarcastic comment thrown during an argument. Or creating drama over something small just to see how you'll react. Or constantly shifting moods, almost like an emotional tug-of-war. This isn't about her being bad or toxic, it's a way some people, consciously or not, check whether the person they're with can hold emotional space. This is where Stoic philosophy becomes incredibly useful. The Stoic mindset teaches us that you don't need to fight for control to be strong. You don't need to raise your voice to be heard. You don't have to match someone's chaos to prove you're in charge. Instead, your strength comes from your ability to stay calm under pressure. Seneca said, "No man is more unhappy than he who never faces adversity. For he is not permitted to prove himself." So when emotional tension rises, don't see it as an attack. See it as an opportunity to prove your depth, your leadership, and your emotional mastery. Here's a real-life scenario to bring this home. Let's say you're both getting ready to go out, and she suddenly makes a cutting comment. "Oh, I guess you just wear whatever you want without even thinking about how I feel about it." Now, you have a choice. You can react and get defensive, "Why are you always criticizing me?" Or, you can pause, breathe, and recognize that this moment is not about the shirt. It's about something deeper. Maybe she feels disconnected. Maybe she's feeling insecure and reaching out the only way she knows how. Instead of firing back, you can calmly respond. "I hear you. Let's talk about what's really going on." Here's the practical insight. Don't get pulled into emotional power struggles. That's not your battleground. Your strength isn't shown by how loud you are, it's shown by how steady you remain when someone else is shaking. When she sees that you don't flinch, that you're not thrown off, and that you respond with calm clarity instead of drama, something powerful happens. She begins to trust you more. She sees that she doesn't need to fight to feel safe, because you are already grounded. In summary, you don't need to dominate emotionally to lead. You just need to be unshakable. Let your silence be stronger than her sarcasm. Let your steadiness be the answer to her tests. And remember, a truly stoic man doesn't get dragged into emotional games, because he's already won the only game that matters, mastering himself. Weakness 8. Let's talk about something that affects a lot of people, especially women who've gone through emotional pain or betrayal. And that is, the difficulty of letting go of the past. Now, this isn't just about holding grudges or being dramatic. It's much deeper than that. When someone, especially a woman, has been hurt in the past, whether by a previous relationship, family trauma, or even something you yourself may have done, that pain doesn't just disappear. It leaves emotional fingerprints. It creates a kind of memory that feels alive, even years later. So sometimes, she may bring up old events, past mistakes, or things that were already talked about. And in your mind, you may be thinking, why are we still talking about this? But to her, it's not about the event, it's about the emotion that still feels unresolved. This can happen in relationships all the time. Maybe you forgot something important months ago, or maybe someone else hurt her before you ever showed up. But now, when a similar situation happens, even if it's small, it reactivates that past pain. This is where Stoicism gives us powerful guidance. Marcus Aurelius, one of the great Stoic emperors, said, "Forget everything else. Keep hold of this alone, you can do the right thing today." What that means is, don't let the past imprison you. Let today be the focus. Let this moment be your opportunity to lead with wisdom. So what do you do when she keeps bringing up the past? When she reopens wounds you thought had healed? You don't shut her down. You don't get defensive. You don't say, "Why are you always bringing this up?" Instead, you stay calm. You listen, not to argue, but to understand. You say something like, "I can hear that this still hurts you. And I want to make sure we don't keep carrying this weight. Let's talk about how we can move forward, together." That small shift, from arguing to listening, from past to present, can change everything. Here's a real-life example. Let's say you're having a disagreement, and suddenly she says, "This is just like that time last year when you didn't show up when I needed you." Now, instead of snapping back with, "Are we really still on that?" pause. Realize that pain is still echoing inside her. Respond with compassion. "I remember that. And I know it hurt you. I want to make sure we don't keep reliving that. What can I do now that helps us both feel safe moving forward?" Here's the practical insight. You can't erase someone's past, but you can help them stop reliving it. You do that by being emotionally present, not by fighting the memory, but by anchoring them in today. Your steadiness becomes her new reference point. Your consistency builds trust. Your presence helps her start releasing what no longer serves her. In summary, some women carry pain longer than they want to, not because they're weak, but because they're still healing. Don't take it personally. Don't fight the past with frustration. Instead, show her, through your calm and patience, that the future is safe, and the present is where life actually happens. Because as the Stoics teach us, the past is beyond our control, but how we respond right now, that's where our power lies. Weakness 9. Let's be honest, communication between men and women often breaks down not because of what was said, but because of what was interpreted. And for many women, this comes down to a natural tendency to overthink, especially when emotions are involved. Now, this isn't about being dramatic or overly sensitive. In fact, it usually comes from a strength, the ability to tune into emotional details. But sometimes, that strength can turn into a weakness when it leads to overanalyzing every word, every facial expression, or every moment of silence. Let's say you send a short text that simply says, "Okay." To you, it's just a neutral response. But to her, it might sound like you're angry, disinterested, or even hiding something. Or maybe you're quiet one evening because you're tired. But she starts wondering, did I say something wrong? Is he upset with me? Suddenly, a simple moment becomes a spiral of overthinking. This is where the Stoic perspective can be incredibly helpful. Stoicism teaches us to clear away unnecessary thoughts, to avoid assuming, imagining, or creating stories in our minds that aren't based on reality. As Marcus Aurelius wrote, if you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it, and this you have the power to revoke at any moment. In other words, it's not always what happens, it's how we interpret what happens that causes suffering. So, when a woman overanalyzes your tone, your timing, or your silence, your role as a Stoic man is not to mock her or shut her down. It's to create clarity. It's to help her return to the present moment, where peace lives. Here's a real-life example to explain this better. Let's say you didn't reply to her message for a few hours because you were genuinely busy. But when you finally text back, she says something like, "Oh, I guess you're ignoring me now." At that moment, don't respond with sarcasm or irritation. That only adds fuel to the fire. Instead, try something like this. "Hey, I wasn't ignoring you at all. I've just had a packed day. But I'm here now, and I'm happy to talk." That calm reassurance helps ease the overthinking and reminds her that everything is okay. Here's the practical insight. A lot of times, women don't want a long explanation, they just want to feel emotionally safe. When you keep your communication clear, honest, and consistent, you give her less room to worry or assume. You become the grounding force she can rely on. In summary, some women naturally notice emotional shifts more deeply, and that can lead to reading too much into small things. As a Stoic man, don't get offended by this. Don't tease her for overthinking. Instead, use your emotional clarity as a gift. Speak with care, be direct, and offer calm reassurance. Because when you remove confusion, you remove conflict. And when you bring clarity, you create connection. Weakness 10. Let's talk about a challenge that shows up in many relationships, especially during arguments or misunderstandings. And that is, the difficulty some women have when it comes to owning their mistakes or taking responsibility during conflict. Now, this doesn't mean all women avoid accountability. But for some, when emotions are running high, especially if they're feeling hurt, exposed, or misunderstood, it can be really hard for them to admit they were wrong or played a part in the issue. Why does this happen? Sometimes it's about pride. Sometimes it's fear that admitting fault will make them look weak, or that it might be used against them later. And other times, it's because they grew up in environments where being wrong wasn't safe. So now, defensiveness becomes a kind of emotional shield. Instead of saying, "You're right, I overreacted," they might say, "Well, I only acted like that because of what you did." They shift the focus away from their own role and put it back on you. Now if you're not careful, that can trigger you. You might feel like, "Wait a minute, I'm not the only one at fault here," and before you know it, you're stuck in a back-and-forth battle of blame. But here's where Stoicism gives us a powerful insight. Stoics don't focus on proving others wrong. They focus on staying honest with themselves, and improving where they can. As Marcus Aurelius said, if someone is mistaken, instruct them kindly and show them their error. But if you can't, blame yourself, or no one. In other words, when conflict happens, your first job isn't to make her admit fault. Your job is to stay calm, stay grounded, and lead by example. Let's imagine a scenario. You and your partner have a miscommunication about plans. Maybe you thought she said one thing, and she thought you agreed to something else. Now she's upset, and instead of talking it through, she blames you entirely. Rather than snap back or go into defense mode, take a breath. Say something like, "I can see how this turned into a misunderstanding. I may not have been clear either. Let's work on how we communicate better next time." What happens when you take that approach? First, you lower the emotional temperature. Second, you model what it looks like to take responsibility, without losing your dignity. And third, you open the door for her to reflect on her part too, without feeling attacked. Here's the practical insight. Be the first to own your mistakes, not as a weakness, but as a strength. When you do this calmly and consistently, you teach her that it's safe to do the same. You don't have to force her to say, "I was wrong." You just need to make it easier for her to get there on her own. And if she never does? You still walked away with your integrity, and your peace, intact. In summary, yes, some women struggle with taking responsibility in moments of conflict. But it's not your job to fix them. It's your job to be the example. Use calmness, self-awareness, and maturity to guide the situation toward resolution, not escalation. Because at the end of the day, Stoicism isn't about who's to blame. It's about who's strong enough to lead with truth, even in the heat of emotion. Conclusion. The Stoic path to better relationships. Understanding these hidden weaknesses is not about judgment, it's about wisdom. As Stoics, we must view others with clarity and compassion. Relationships thrive when both partners grow in self-awareness. By mastering yourself first, you empower others to do the same. Every man who walks the Stoic path becomes a mirror of strength, peace, and rational love. So ask yourself, are you reacting, or responding? Are you blaming, or understanding? Are you trying to control, or choosing to lead with virtue? The Stoic man doesn't seek perfection in others. He builds it within himself. Thank you for watching. Subscribe for more insights on Stoic philosophy, self-mastery, and meaningful living. Let's grow stronger, together.